Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Paranormal Weekend Morning Brew Show. I'm Nighthawk, one of your hosts. And again, today we're going to have our special guest host on here, one of the hostess with the mostest, Gerald from Midwest. And then we're going to have Dennis on here too, the other with the mostest. And we're going to get into all kinds of paranormal subjects and subjects of the weird, maybe even macabre, who knows. But we'll get into it and we'll see what's going on from there. We might go off or all the way, actually, as I would say, all the way. Anyways, the FBI warning. Federal laws produce, distribute, exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, and video discs under certain circumstances. Authorization of the copyright holder. This is called Fair Use Act and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe upon copyright holder under Section 17, subsection USC 107 of the Fair Use Act. All right. And that is from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Okay. Let me see here. We'll pull another one up here because I get to use my Hollyweird voice for the next one. Oh, did I say Hollyweird? I'm sorry. Is that bullying? I'm so sorry. All right. Let's see here. My Hollyweird voice. Okay. And no, it's not going to be Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or Porky Pig. Well, it might be Porky Pig a little bit the way I'm feeling. All right. This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine. All right. Got that out of the way, and I didn't even do Porky Pig. All right, let's see here. Let me get this up. Oh, good God. Sorry, I got mouse on. That's not too good to look at first thing in the morning. All right, let me see here. Okay, I am going to bring, well, honestly, I want to talk to you all a little bit for a second, just about a few things. I appreciate certain stuff for the channel. I really appreciate the way the chat is. I mean, you guys are awesome in the chat. Now that the warmer weather is coming back again, I'm going to start doing Nighthawk by the fire. So thinking of bringing someone on the show with me to kind of learn the ins and outs of StreamYard and how to deal with technical problems so he can have his own podcast. And that is our friend and cohort in crime, Mr. Midwest himself, Gerald. And let's see. I'll bring Dennis and Gerald on now. But those of you that know that the channel for a while by the fire was on at 9 p.m. So I'm thinking of bringing that back Wednesday nights at 9 time. And that is where I get to sit around the fire with Buddy and discuss Native American, do a little bit of Native American storytelling and whatnot. Okay. Let's see here. And other things too. So. Okay, it doesn't mean to bring them. Let's see. Don't drop off there again. Okay. All right. I believe everybody's in place. And look at my face solely. You get to look at Dennis's bright and shiny face. Bright and shiny face. So let me, and we'll get into the discussion.
I need to shave, actually.
Morning.
Good morning.
That's okay. I got no neck.
I got my outdoors ensemble on today. I got my plaid shirt on. I'm ready to go out in the forest here.
Yeah, but you look like you got to have a lumberjack's axe in your hand.
Lumberjack. A lumberjack move today. I'm gonna cut some people down. You better watch out now. No, I'm not gonna mess with Hollywood. Those poor people. We don't want to bully them.
No. No. I thought about it there for a second during the intro, but then again, I decided not to. So, we all know that even though they make millions and millions and millions of dollars every year, that and live in multi-million-dollar mansions, that they can't be bullied. So,
oh no,
they're too tender. So, okay, I was going to leave the subject up to you guys, but the possibility of these being real, and I think this is gonna make Dennis, and maybe you too, Gerald, because we can kind of get on the subject of Hollyweird without getting on the subject of Hollyweird. But I'd kind of like to talk about. Let's see if I can get
horror
it to pop
movies.
up.
We could talk about horror movies, huh? That's one of my favorite subjects, by the way. I've been a horror movie fan.
I kind of wanted to talk because
my first grade teacher got on to me, William, for watching horror movies back when I was 6 years old. So there you go. I've been a big fan of horror movies for a long, long time.
And my curl. I don't know. I grew up wrong, Dennis, because my family encouraged it.
Well, I'm kind of old school. I'm kind of old school when it comes to the horror movie thing. I'm kind of old school. I like the older horror movies. I'm not too much into the slasher, torture type stuff, which I think is kind of sick. I'm more into the older type, monster movies. That's what I like.
Yeah, growing up, we used to have a Saturday night show on our local channels called Acre Creature Features. And they'd show all the old horror movies.
Shock Theater. That would be the one with the guy's floating head. He looked really bad. Well, he looked like warmed over death, He would always say, come on in, kiddies, I've got something for you, It was really weird stuff. Back in the old days, you could do so much without offending anybody, You didn't worry about offending anybody back in the day. But that was the good old days.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna go say hello to everybody this morning. We've got in the house, starting off in position number 1. We have Scott. Scott is in the house, position number 1. Then we have Darcy. Then we have Tom from North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project.
Oh yeah, Tom, how you doing?
We have Christy Crawford. Good morning, Christy.
Hey, Christy.
Then we have Melissa and Larry. Good morning, Larry and Melissa. Then we have Ozzy Sue. Boy, it must be really late in the morning there. Then we have, of course, our co-host with the mostest, Midwest Night Watchers himself, which is probably his other half.
No, it was
and then
me.
We have, let's see, Miss Karen Peterson, the executive producer of weekend program is in. Then we have Dave. Dave is in the house. I thought he might have had to work this morning, but I guess not. It's good to see you, Dave.
Good. Hello, Dave.
And Joey Z. Joey Z is back in the house.
Yeah, Joey. All right.
That's it. Let me see. Steven made it in. Steve made it in. Okay.
The WW is assembling the Weirdo Warriors.
House is. Yeah, Weirdos. And we're going to get into the Hollyweird horror movies. We're going to get into maybe even some of the myths behind them and the authors and all that behind their books and stuff that made them into movies.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite movie?
Well,
I always loved seeing
Heart has been
Charlie looking hand through the open.
Heart. Oh yeah. Horror's
and
been
just
with us
kind
for
of
a long time.
grabbing somebody.
You look at Frankenstein, which was written back in about the very early 1800s. Dracula came along in the late 1800s. Horror has been with us for a long, long time. I think it began with the caveman, sitting around the campfires at night, and they couldn't see beyond the light of the campfires. They didn't know what was out there in the dark. They knew something that if they went out there in the dark, they probably wouldn't come back. Probably saber-tooth tiger or something would get them. But the horror has always been with us. It's been with us in our nightmares. It's been with us in our stories and our entertainment. And we all kind of like to get scared by these things, or we enjoy the entertainment value of it. To me, it's very interesting. But horror goes deep in the psychological type stuff. We face our childhood fears whenever we see Jason Voorhees hack up somebody, or Michael Myers goes after somebody with a knife. We kind of face our fears, and we say, what would I do in that situation, or what would I do? I've watched people. If you want to see something interesting, I love to watch people at horror movies in theaters, their reaction to what they're doing. Of course, some people will talk back to the screen. Oh, watch out! Watch out! Don't get out there! Stay over there! They hollering at the screen, and they get really emotional and deep into these things. But horror has that effect more so than some other type. The westerns or the romance and all that. To me, that's the interesting thing about horror. It brings out some very traumatic emotion, to that. To me, that's the interesting part of it. But like I say, it is rooted in our basic fears from childhood, actually.
I remember seeing advertisements posted for the Vincent Price movie, The Tingler, when they had the little creature going up into the spine of the humans during the movie and stuff.
The Tingler. Yeah.
And they had their advertisements for the movie that it was so scary that you didn't want to attend, and obviously that drew everybody into the theater. And they had the movie seats. We watched all the old previews to it where they actually showed people in the audience watching the movie, and they were passing out and fainting from the movie because they were so scared from all the advertising.
Oh, yeah. And, they actually had some of the seats fixed. They had the seats fixed where they would actually shock people a little bit. That was in the Tingler thing. They had.
Yeah.
And then when he did the House on Haunted Hill, they would have a skeleton on a wire come down through the audience, in a certain period in time. That's great showmanship there. That's very much like Barnum and Bailey kind of ringling circus type thing, you got a lot of showmanship going on there with that. But like I said, you couldn't get away with that today. I remember my mother telling me that she saw the original Frankenstein when she was a little girl, and at the theater, at the movie when it first came out, and that was something awful. People thought that was the most awful thing when Boris Karloff backs out of that room and turns slowly around. That's what really got him. She said people were screaming and passing out, and they were having to haul them out of the theater. They had never seen anything like that, And but when I watch Frankenstein today, I have to wonder, how could that be so scary? But if you look at these older horror movies, they're like looking at a painting, a piece of art. The way they're the black and the white, does. It's almost like an art. It is an art form, It's it's like art come to life, But like I say, when he backed out of that room, I slowly turned around and he could see and he looked bad. He really looks bad. It was nothing but the shock effect for it, and that's what they were going for.
Well, we're so desensitized now. You couldn't do a film like that now. That's the only problem.
That's why they try to top themselves. They keep going on and on. I'm going to do this to show more. And to me, that is sickening in a way because they get to the point where they venerate torture and mutilation. I mean, I like a good horror story, but come on, you can go into overkill on some of this stuff. No pun intended. You can really go too far with it, and it becomes a sickening kind of an obsession or something, which I could see why some of that stuff really, thrilled serial killers because that was right up their kind of alley there. But it's almost some of it, if you go look at it today, is downright demonic in the way its conception is and the way it's presented. It's not good at all, really. It's not entertainment to me.
No, about the closest thing they came here within the years was Blair Witch Project.
I kind of the thing I liked about the Blair Witch Project, it left so much up to your imagination. That's a good thing to do. I have written stories like that I say, I could describe it for you, but what you can imagine is a whole lot worse than what I could describe. When I think about that, when I write a story, I leave so much up to the reader to fill in on it, and it makes it much better that way. Stephen King is very good at that. A lot of the great horror writers were very good at that. The imagination is what you want to capture. Because you can do a lot with the imagination.
Did we lose William?
Yeah, true. Very true. No, I'm still here. I'm just listening to the conversation.
All right. There was one old movie that I watched that scared me. And it wasn't really that scary, but at the time, being younger, was called The Hand. It was almost like the Frankenstein thing where the scientists took hands out of corpses and attached it to other people. And the one was the hand that he attached to himself because he lost it in an accident. And it turned out to be.
That's based on a very famous story. I think it's by Guy DeMont. I'm sure. But anyway, The Hand actually began as a story where this guy goes, he meets this rich man, and the man is taking him around his house, giving him a tour. He's got a big mansion, and they come to this room. It's this trophy room, It's got a lot of animals on the wall. And they said, there's a table in the room, a glass case, and in the glass case with a chain on it is a human hand. And he tells the millionaire, what? I'm amazed at all your stuff, but what's the story about this? What are you doing with a human hand here in your trophy room? He said, well, that is the hand of my worst enemy. He's dead, but I kept his hand as a souvenir. But it moves around at night, so that's why it's chained. And the guy thinks, the millionaire is wacky, He's done gone around the bend. But anyway, make a long story short, the millionaire ends up dead, and the guy investigates it. Of course, he's kind of like Sherlock Holmes or something, He investigates it, and he said they could never figure out what happened, but the millionaire was found with the indentations of fingers marks on his throat. And the hand, he went and looked at the hand to go see the hand, and it was gone. The chain was broken. The glass was broken and the hand was gone, and that's the way it ends. Great story, and that's what that movie's based on, a little bit.
Well, the one I'm thinking of, and it might not be the hand, it might be the crawler or something named different. But anyway, he put the hand on his arm because he lost his hand in an automobile accident or something. But the hand was from a robber or somebody that was evil. So then the hand started turning on him and doing stuff and couldn't control it. So which brings me to my question. Do you think, like in Frankenstein or that instance, that body parts could project things to the donor?
Well, I don't know about the body parts, but the interesting thing about Frankenstein is when he created this monster we call it now, this man. He was supposed to put a good brain in him, you know. And Igor, his assistant, went to steal the brain from the university there, the medical school, and he messes up and he breaks, he drops the jar and he breaks it, so he picks up and gets another brain, but this is the abnormal brain of a murderer that he gets, and that's what Dr. Frankenstein never realizes this until the end, that he actually put the wrong brain in there, and that's why the monster has a tendency to want to go around and kill everybody.
Right.
He's got the brain of a murderer. But it's interesting to note that would your spirit still remain around your body parts? That's an interesting concept. Just like that story I told you about the hand, was his spirit still motivating that hand? You'd have to wonder about that. There was another movie very similar to that, unless that's the same movie you're talking about, where the guy was a concert pianist. And he got his hand, he was in an accident, and one of his hands was disfigured, and he got a hand transplant. And that's where the hand started trying to kill him, and it turned out he had the hand of a murderer that was donated or something. But he can still play music. He can still play the piano, I think.
I read a story
that's kind of like that old joke, Gerald. You asked the doctor said, well, your arm's going to be all right. So the guy says, well, good. Can I still play the piano? Can I play the piano? And he said, yeah, sure. And he said, well, that's funny. I never could before. Anyway,
I saw an article posted not too long ago where a lady got a heart transplant. And after that fact, she could paint delicate and intricate paintings where she could never, ever draw hardly a stick figure before. All of a sudden, she had all this artistic ability, and they were wondering if it was tied into the implant.
Well, the one thing I think they would implant would be the brain that would completely change you. If you had a different person's brain, you wouldn't be Gerald anymore. That would be the way that would go. About any other body part, I don't know. Like I say, unless you're talking about the spiritual concept of it, I don't think it would really bother you. There's a lot of people. I knew a man that had a heart transplant, and he did very good with it. I mean, he was still the same guy. It had no effect on him in that respect, although it lengthened his life, which is a good thing. But there are, people that have eye transplants, kidney transplants, lung transplants. Like we said, yesterday, that might be one of the reasons why aliens are so interested in mutilation of people and everything. Are they trying to prolong their own immortality? Because if you could clone yourself, Gerald, and then could go back and harvest the parts from yourself, they would fit you perfectly.
Right.
You wouldn't have to worry about rejection of a transplant. That would be you. You could almost live forever and keep replacing the parts, and cloning more. You're looking at your own immortality. That's an interesting concept. And that's the basis of a lot of horror movies, too, by the way.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's probably coming pretty soon, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Cloning is very frightening in some ways when you think about it. It is like a Frankenstein project. Cloning. If you can clone yourself, you got all the body parts you need, and that's where Frankenstein. He has a very interesting thing that he says in the movie. He says, "I am from the dead. I love the dead. I am the dead." He equates himself more with the dead and the body parts that put him together because he was so many different. He's a man of many parts, you might say. He was so many different people, but they were all dead people. That's what they brought forth. He could never get past that. He wasn't born like a natural person, and he felt inhuman because of that. So you got to wonder, your creation would have feeling and emotions and know something like that. Dr. Frankenstein didn't bank on that. You know, he didn't think about the ramifications of what he was doing. He just wanted to play God. That's just the way that goes. And you see that theme over and over and over again in all the horror, many of the older horror movies. Don't believe God, kind of a thing, you know, because you're going to end up in a bad situation. Look at the giant ants. Why did we have giant ants? Because man was playing around with radiation and atomic bombs. You know, there you go. You're playing God again. You know. You had giant praying mantis. You had giant spiders. You had all this because of what people were doing with radiation experiments and stuff. That was another that if you look back in the 50s and 60s at those movies, you realize that the greatest fear prevalent at that time was nuclear destruction, the bombs, you know, the nuclear factor. People were that was in the back of their mind. What if we go out that way? What if they drop the bombs on us and all this horrible thing? Because they saw what happened with Japan, you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you know, in World War II. They saw the destruction. They knew what it was, you know. That was a horror in the back of their minds, and it still is there. It's being revived again today. The threat of nuclear annihilation is a bad thing.
Yeah, about that time you're talking about, they had the movie The Tarantula when it was the same thing, nuclear radiation. And then you mix in spiders, everybody's fear to begin with, and you get
That's
this great big thing
spiders,
destroying houses and throwing cars and
yeah. I would like to see a movie about a giant lobster. That would be interesting. But anyway, you try to catch that habit for dinner, right? But it might have you for dinner. One of the worst one, I can't remember the name. I think it was the Beast of 60,000 Fathoms or something. This thing looked like some. It looked. You know what a jackworm is? Okay, you know what a jackworm is. We used to catch them and fish with them. You know, this thing looked like a giant jackworm. It come out of the ocean. This thing was awful looking. It had these big old eyes on it, you know, and it had big hookers, you know. And I could say, oh, that's definitely somebody's fear there. You know, they evidently don't like jackworms. But jackworms can bite you if you're not careful. You know, they have the hookers. You know, but that was a bad-looking monster. But some of my favorite horror movies were science fiction. I love the science fiction too, like the War of the Worlds. You know, and that's an interesting thing about H.G. Wells when he wrote the War of the Worlds. At the very end, the Martians beat the crap out of us. They had us right where they wanted us. You know, the world was laid waste. It was down, a few people left. And when the ships started to fall and the doors opened up and the Martians were dead, and the very last end, it said that all of man's technology, everything that we had, our weapons and our brains and everything, could not defeat the Martians. It was the littlest thing that God put on this earth, the germs that got them in the end. A great story.
yeah.
It shows that even if you try to play God and try to be so good about what you're doing and so caught up on yourself, that, you know, you get showed up in the end. That's pretty interesting. But I love the old horror, the old science fiction. One of my favorite. You might remember the Invasion of the Saucer Men. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about hands, their hands would crawl around. Remember that? It was in the back seat and crawled up on the girl's shoulder, you know. And they had needles in their fingers, you know. And it's an interesting thing about that. That's one of the few, except for Plan 9 from Outer Space, where they actually talk about government cover-ups of UFOs. And this is back in the 50s now. So it's been around a long time. It's not something we've just come up with recently. But I remember in Plan 9 from Outer Space, they're shooting at the saucers in there, and the guys in the Army are looking through the binoculars, and the guy says, you know, we can't talk about this, you know. And he says, no, we're just doing some practice shooting at the clouds. You know? So it was all a cover-up, you know.
Yeah.
That's the way that went. That's Ed Wood, by the way.
Going back to cloning, you got the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, yeah.
where they came down and the first pod, it takes over the guy and the woman, she goes to the doctors and all that, and they say, "Oh, you're crazy," that's not happening. And pretty soon everybody's being slowly replaced, and all those pods are out back in their garden or their.
Yeah. That's real freaky. And they say that was a takeoff on the fear of communism, by the way, in the country at that time in the 50s.
I always
I
thought it
like
was
the
about the
original.
Biden administration.
Well, they got
fear.
clones too.
I think it's fear of plants, actually. But anyway, but here's the interesting thing about the original body snatchers. It ends good. They finally believe him at the end. He gets evidence, and that is a horrible thing to think about, that you know something and nobody believes you. And it's something so terrible like this that they're gonna take over the world. Nobody will believe you. That's the really basis of the horror of this movie, is that nobody will believe you. But they do believe him in the end. And when they did the remake on it, I think in the 70s or 80s, they actually didn't do that. They left that out, and it's the end, and at the very end, last scene, you see the hero running around trying to tell these aliens, and everybody's aliens now. He's the only one left, and he's still running around trying to, that was a bad ending for that kind of a story, but it didn't have much hope to it. But I'll tell you another genre, another part of the horror movies. Another thing of the horror movies I like are the end of the world horror movies. Like The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, and the Omega Man with Charlton Heston. Those are some great movies. I love that end of the world scenario too, kind of a thing.
Yeah, the Omega Man. That's right up the stories of today. The virus coming down and taking over and changing everybody. And look what we just went through.
Right, and it was sort of like what we went through here recently, isn't it? In many ways, what the world eventually ended up going through was very much like the Omega Man or I'm Legend. I tell you,
except
the original. What now?
I don't know, but what we just went through definitely changed a lot of people's mind. Not their body so much, but their mindset. Boy, did it change everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, the original with Vincent Price, the Last Man on Earth. Here's the interesting part about it. And I've met the guy that wrote. I met the daughter of the guy that wrote this movie, Richard Matheson, great writer. He's passed on now. Fantastic writer. Did a lot of Star Trek. Did a lot of stuff, man. Everything. And his daughter is real sweet lady. I enjoyed talking to her. Anyway, Vincent Price sitting in that house alone by himself every night, and here come the vampires, beating him, come out, Morgan, there's one of them knows him, and he's slowly going insane, out of loneliness and desperation. And yet he goes out every morning and kills these things. He finds them and stakes them one by one. And he comes to find out at the end that the half people, there were some people left that weren't all the way into being vampires, was what they were originally. And some of those people are left, and they hate him, the last man, because he's been killing some of them unknowingly. He didn't know it, So he's become a legend, but a bad legend to them. And so he finds out at the end he's not the good guy at all. He's the bad guy, That's an interesting, great story, Yeah,
that was a great scene after he saved her with a blood transfusion to give her the antibodies. And then the group ended up tracking him down and killing him. Yeah. And then she became the savior of the community.
Exactly. Yeah, he actually saved them, whether they really knew it or not. And that's the way it goes with the Omega Man. The last thing they get from him is a pint of his blood, before he dies. So he's really the savior, but he's also the bad guy. That's an interesting twist on the story, you know. Um, it shows you, though, what I find so interesting is the psychological factors of it. There he is going insane, you know, loneliness and all this is slowly driving him insane. So it would work on you psychologically, definitely, big time, to think that you were the only person left, you know. I always remember him sitting at his town radio calling somebody. You know, I'm on this frequency. Answer me, you know. There's nobody there. That's bad. That's bad. Yeah, Pumpkinhead and Leprechaun were two some. That's the more modern things. Pumpkinhead is actually based on a demon, a real demon. The Leprechauns were made a little more evil than I think they really are in the Leprechaun series. If you want me, they're very tricky, but that you know, there again, you're getting into the kind of sicko stuff, you know, some of this stuff.
Yeah, those Leprechaun series movies that came out, man, they were pretty gruesome at times.
Do you remember what kept him in his crate? It was a 4-leaf clover. Remember that? It was on the crate. Yeah. Bad luck. Yeah. Okay. Don't get rid of the 4-leaf clover. No.
I'm surprised. Nobody even. Yeah, I'm surprised nobody even brought up the movie Puppet Master.
Oh yeah, Puppet Master.
Puppet Master. That's a good one too. Yeah. There's been several different Puppet Master movies. One of them was actually a guy that turned everybody small. You remember that? It was a mad scientist who made everybody little, you know. They were sort of his puppets. But then the Puppet Master was a serial killer type guy, too. Remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I say, that's when you start getting into dark territory. You start getting into torture and mutilation. To me, that's not a horror factor. That's more like a psychological, you know, serial killer kind of a territory to get into. I've studied a lot of serial killers, and the mindset of these people is very dark and evil, and just you know, I remember reading about like John Wayne Gacy and some of these. I'd want to go take a shower after I read this. You know what I'm saying? You just feel bad. You feel like the evil's getting on you, you know, kind of thing, because it's so prevalent there, you know. But I've actually seen movies that would do that. They give you that bad kind of I call it sort of a spiritual feeling, and it's not a good spiritual feeling. They sort of attack your spirit, you know. And, you know, William and I've talked about that before, about the eyes or the windows of the soul. What goes into you can affect you, not only physically, but spiritually as well, you know.
That's the thing. The Exorcist scared me more, you know, growing up in the church and, you know, studying the Bible and stuff. And then you have the Exorcist coming out being one of your biggest fears of stuff that really is happening to you. That movie, when I watched it Alone in the Dark, that really scared me. Not because of physically, but just because of mentally.
Still one of my favorite horror movies, Gerald. I'll tell you why it is, because it could be real. And I've seen it be real to a certain extent. I actually talked to William Peter Blatty, the guy that wrote The Exorcist. He's passed on now, and I asked him a question. I told him, I got one question. How did you feel after you wrote this story, you know? And he said, here's what he told me. It's very interesting. He said, well, I didn't believe any of this until I got into it and began to research it. And I wrote it and found out about it. And now I'm a believer. And that struck me as very interesting. You know, the writer himself, the creator of it, was changed by this because of the subject matter, because it could be very real. It was real. It was not a girl. It was a boy, actually, that's based on. And then guess what it started with? Are you ready? Of course, you know that it all started with the Ouija board. Okay, there you go. in real
Yeah.
life. Now, you don't see that in the movie. It's not. It's kind of alluded to in the movie, but you don't see it that much in the original. Mr. Howdy was actually a demon. As she mentioned, Mr. Howdy was her sort of imaginary friend. Yeah, it wasn't imaginary; it was real. Yeah, that was the bad thing about it. But my favorite scene is when Father Merrin comes for the first time, and he comes to that house. He's got his bag, and he gets out of the taxi, and he looks, and there's like fog coming out of that house. You know, I mean, it looks bad. And I'm thinking that guy right there has really got the guts to go into that situation, knowing what he's going into, and really he realizes that this is probably his last go around here. You know. And because this demon has got his name, this demon Pazuzu, which is really Belial, actually, the demon Belial, actually tracks him from Iraq here. You know, he begins in Iraq. You know, he sees a statue of him and all that. Um, this demon's got his name, and he knows this is the last go around with him, you know. But the interesting thing is the young priest turns out to be the hero. He lets the demon come in him and he kills himself. It was supposedly, actually, in remakes of that, and the other stories, the priest is really still alive. The young priest is still alive in an insane asylum because the demon is still in him. But you can go today, girl, and see that actual flight of stairs that the priest went down. You know, when he jumped out the window, it's not in the house is not near there. It's a different house altogether, a different place. But you can go, and people still go take pictures of the stairs. You're talking about a scary looking set of stairs of all that.
That was my favorite scene in that whole movie was when it's dark out and foggy and you just have barely the street lamps shining down and they got that music playing in the background as he's going down the stairs. That was a good scene.
And you know, another interesting thing about The Exorcist is the policeman. He is sort of the antagonist, yet he's sort of the humanistic part of it. Instead of the spiritual part, he's the humanistic part of it because he represents the law and order, you know, civilization as pitted against the demonic. That's very interesting too. Great actor did that, Lee J. Cobb. And later on, George C. Scott took up that role, by the way, in some of the remakes on it. Anyway, that's the interesting part of it. He's sort of the critical eye to it. You know, what will it stand up to forensics? You know, that's an interesting concept on it. But there are scenes that were cut out of the original movie, like where she comes down the stairs walking like a spider. You remember that? You know, down the stairs and all that, and nobody sees her. She's in the background. You know, that's freaky stuff. But the actual placing of that demonic face that would flash up every now and then. Remember that? Flash up. I mean, that was a shock value that they were going after.
Now that character was actually a boy, right? In the real life.
Yeah, in the original story, it was a young boy, and then the exorcism took about several months, not just one night thing. It took over several. I think it was a period, maybe it was a year. The actual exorcist took place, and it was in a hospital, by the way, not in a house. Where it actually went. And the guy is still alive today. He really doesn't remember a whole lot of it. Nobody, you know, we don't know his name. Nobody knows where he's at, but he's out there somewhere. I guess he's still alive. He went through this, you know. But of course, a lot of what you see is Hollywood eyes, you know. It's against Hollywood, you know, the spitting of the green pea soup and all that, you know, and the head going around, you know. I'll tell you where they get the head thing at, okay? And I've talked about this before. Actual, true, real demonic murder. And there is such a thing. It's very rare, though. But actually, demons use other people or circumstances to commit murder. They don't usually come out and do it themselves. But once in a while, they will. And actual true demonic murder, the body will be found with the head turned completely around backwards. That's how they kill you, all the way around. And you're looking back over your back. That's how they find you. That is true demonic murder. If you ever see someone murdered like that, you have to look and say, oh, this may be supernatural. This may not be something, done by humans. But
Yep.
they found out about that, and they put that. That's why they put that in the movie where her head goes all around. There's no way humanly possible that would happen without you dying. Okay, that you would have been dead if you'd really done that. So you got a lot of Hollywood. You got to cut through the Hollywood stuff to get to the real grist of the real story. But one of the worst exorcisms was Michelle. What was her name? I can't think of her name. She was a lady in Germany, and she died during the exorcism. Actually, you can see a lot of that on the internet still today. Malicia something was her name, I think, or something like that. Anyway, she's a beautiful girl, but she didn't look that way at the end. They did a job on her, and she unfortunately died during her exorcism. And that happens sometimes because the human heart can only take so much. And I'm not talking emotionally, I'm talking about physically before it can give out. And these things catch you. I remember a priest telling me one time that the most amazing thing about exorcism was the body would heat up. He said it'd be so hot you couldn't touch them. It was like a burning fever. And it is sort of like a fever, I guess. That takes a toll on you physically if it goes on too long. Definitely. Your body is host to something that is not normal. It's not supposed to be there. It has invaded. This host has invaded your body. It's going to do some freaky things. Definitely.
Yeah, you get a demonic, then you can talk about the Amityville Horror where actually it turns out where the father was doing rituals downstairs.
A lot of that was a fraud. A lot of that was made up just to make some money off of the Amityville thing. I think it had a little bit of true supernatural stuff to it because it was a murder house, But Ed and Lorraine Warren got kind of involved in it. And I'll tell you something about Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were brilliant researchers, and I got nothing to say bad about them. I learned a lot from them. But they tended to really get caught up in the publicity of things sometimes. And I think it shaded their outlook, unfortunately. That's just human, though. That happens. But they were the premier investigators at that time. So, you can kind of understand why they got caught up in it like that, But I think the Amityville, I've always heard the whole Amityville thing was stalled up one night over a bottle of wine. But that's another story. But Hollywood took that, of course, and ran with it because of The Exorcist, The Exorcist opened the demonic doors for Hollywood. They said, hey, this is something that's really we can take to the bank here. This is something we can do something with. And look at Michael Myers in Halloween. He is possessed by a demon. Yeah, the demon, that he kills. That he kills it. I like that's another one of my more favorite modern horror movies, Halloween. Is at the very end there where, she's crying and she said, and Donald Pleasant shoots him 6 times with a 357 Magnum and he falls out the window, And he looks out there and he's laying on the ground. And the girl says, was that the boogeyman? And he looks back out there and he's gone. He said, yes, I'm afraid he was. That's pretty great. That's great stuff there, But it is demonic. He is, and look at Jason Voorhees. How could he not be demonic?
Right.
He comes back out of the lake after you. That's bad too. So that The Exorcist opened the door for a lot of this, in its concept.
Yeah, you get in those movies, where you think the evil is dead, then all of a sudden it springs back out at you. That just sends a shock to you.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about the fear that the evil of what can get inside of us. Instead of the outside forces, we can face it. Maybe we could shoot at it with a gun. We could take on Dog Man, maybe if we had to. But the evil inside, like Jekyll and Hyde, is something you can't hardly fight because it's you.
Yeah.
It's in you. That's a bad thing, but that's like William and I said on the show not long ago. The real monsters are us. That's what I said when I was a kid. I was big on monster movies, and I grew to find out that monsters were real, but they are us, unfortunately. They're not Frankenstein and a Wolfman. They are us, unfortunately. We can see them in the mirror every morning when we shave, or when we need to shave, anyway.
You could almost go back to the radio shows with the shadow. Like, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
Oh, yeah, the Shadow. The Shadow is actually the inspiration for Batman. They stole Batman from the Shadow, And it was an interesting thing. I used to read comics a lot when I was a kid. I don't know about you. I always traded comics and bought comics. I was big on comics. The first thing I read was comics. And until they got redundant and it was the same story over and over and over again, But there's an interesting scene where Batman and the Shadow meet for the first time in one of these comics. And the Shadow says, I'm glad to meet you, Batman. And I've heard a lot about you. And Batman says, I'm happy to meet you. You are my mentor. So it was an interesting meeting.
I'm surprised.
They say that the original, another idea for Batman was Zorro. Zorro, the sign of the sea. And Zorro is the movie that's playing when Bruce Wayne's parents are murdered. They leave the theater, and they're shot down and killed by the future Joker. The movie playing on the marquee is the Mark of Zorro. That's very interesting.
So that out of that scene you just described about dancing with the
surprised.
devil and the pale
I'm
moonlight.
I'm really surprised nobody commented on one movie that I'm sure we all have seen, either in the movie theater or on TV, and that is the movie The Blob.
Oh, yeah, The Blob, yeah. That is bad.
Steve McQueen.
That was a great movie. Yeah, Steve McQueen. Actually, that made Steve McQueen famous. He also had Andy Griffin's girlfriend, future wife, and as his girlfriend. But the interesting thing about the Blob plays on the fear of science going amok, or some kind of alien out there, alien life that we can't control. That's the fear of the Blob. It'll eat you up. If you're not careful.
That was another one of those. That was another one of those movie advertisements where they had everybody running out of the theater with the Blob coming through, and it's part of the scene in it.
Yeah, which was actually a bunch of jelly they pumped in a model. It comes out of the door. Yeah. I always liked the song. You remember the song of the Blob? It moves and it does, There's a great little song there. I always like to watch the Blob. It's good to see those old automobiles. I love to look at those. They had.
Yep, and it goes back to the thing where only those kids were experiencing the Blob at the beginning, and nobody would believe them. That this stuff was happening. Then you start thinking to yourself, you're crazy. You were mentioning that earlier about how everything that affects you and it doesn't affect anybody else. And that, come on, kid.
I got Jessica, the cryptid hunter, said something very interesting here. I've been asked to look on the murders where the head was twisted around and Dogman was suspected. But that's an interesting thing, Jessica, because there is a school of thought that the Dogman may perhaps be demonic to a certain extent, and that might tie in together on that. Demonic murder would be committed by something like Dogman if he is demonic. Uh, there is a thought that Dogman was brought about into this world by dark and evil magic. Supposedly, there's that thought about him not being just a cryptid like Sasquatch, that the Dogman may possibly be demonic in his origin.
Yeah. Well, I've got a little bit of inside information on that too, though. The whole, as far as whenever we used to go hunting, back where I'm from, there it was a couple times when my brother and I ran into a deer that had and the only thing we found laying on the ground, the body was gone. And we could tell it was twisted off because the fur on the so and this was sightings, and I think that is what Bigfoot use when they're in the tree, down out of the tree, and by the neck they twist the head up.
Yeah. Well, it could be to say that certain things
it is
kill like that. Yeah. There's another school of thought about Dogman that he originated black magic of the Native Americans back many, many years ago, that he was brought from some other dimension that way. And that could be the demonic connection I'm talking about here with that. So there's a very interesting schools of thought on that. But an animal in the wild, such as a gorilla, would probably kill by twisting the head as well. Certain animals would do that, but the demonic is supposed to murder that way, supposedly.
Now the last theory I heard not too long ago was that the Dogman was brought here by an alien species to be slaves and work for him, to be like a physical beast, and they eventually overpowered and turned, and their will wouldn't let them do that anymore. So they left him here.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are supposed to be certain species on this planet. If you look at the praying mantis, he doesn't look like he belongs here. He's a very alien-looking thing. There's supposed to be certain species on this planet that may have been seeded by supposed alien resources. Dogman might be possibly one of them. Sasquatch could be one for all we know. We're talking about something that goes back hundreds of thousands of years here, not just recent stuff. There's a school of thought on that too, that maybe these things were put here from other dimensions, or they're on purpose, to see as a part of the experiment, maybe,
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see what Jessica figures out about that. But as far as the whole connection to the paranormal and the Holly weird horror movies, TV, and in the theaters, a lot of that stuff is based on fact.
Oh yeah.
And some is based on theory, or just plain stupidity. But the Hollywood movies, the horror movies was always the fear factor. Okay, it was that dreaded fear factor, that suspense fear factor that you had when you were sitting on the edge of your seat waiting to something to happen, and you had that spine tingling chill go down your spine. To me, fear connection is paranormal. because we all know that paranormal of high intense, you know,
Well, William, it's like what
you know,
Alfred
draws out the
Hitchcock said.
paranormal.
Alfred Hitchcock said that you're no more alive than when you're scared half to death. The adrenaline flows. You get that hyped up feeling, you know, you're more alive when you're scared half to death. And that's being human, you know. But hey, Hollywood knows that, you know. They banked on that. They made a lot of money off of that. But you know, you're right. They do base a lot of these movies on fact, just like The Exorcist. That was what's so scary about it. It was based on a true story. They go and they find the resources. They do the research. You have to hand them that. If you're going to be a good writer of any kind of thing, whether it's screenplays or movies, books, or whatever, you got to do your research. Research is all important thing, you know. And some of these are great researchers. They really get it down pat, you know, and put it in the movies and all that. That's why we say sometimes it's almost like a code. You know, one of the greatest books ever written was the Bible. And the Bible has been read and written about by everybody since Shakespeare, Poe, everybody. Even Hollywood uses the Bible. It goes back and gets stories out of the Bible. It uses that. So that's just one example of research, okay? To me, there are some very important facets of research that you can't ignore. And one of those is to get it from the source. That's the main one. Go to the source and try to get it. The horse's mouth, as they used to say. That's where you get your best research, you know. Yeah, the Rougarou is a Cajun werewolf said to be caused from a curse. That's black magic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it reverts back to what you were just talking about, Dennis, about, you know, good versus evil. And everybody has that conflict, you know, thinking about when you come to, say, demonic versus good in us, you know, you always have that fear in the back of your head, and they play off that all the time.
That's a good, interesting thing Jessica just said there. I have a hard time watching scary horror movies. Yeah, I spend my time chasing real monsters in the deep woods. But see, Jessica, Hollywood knows how to push your buttons. They know how to push our buttons, and they do it very well. They know the psychological games they can play with us with the movies, you know. It's a different thing when you face it in real life because you're sort of controlling your circumstances to a certain extent, more so than watching a movie you have no control over. It's kind of like being shown a nightmare and you're reliving it again of what you've been through. That's an interesting thing about Hollywood. They know how to do that.
Yeah, they take your fears and then they expand on that and make it even greater than. Then by the time you face it out in the real world by chance, then your mind starts thinking, oh my gosh, you know, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And you just start worrying yourself to death before anything even really happens.
And the movie amplifies it for you. You know, it's bigger. It's bigger on a screen, or it's bigger there. You know, it's put in your mind, like I said, through those windows of the soul again. It's a direct assault in some ways. To you psychologically. That's why I find it, you know, so very interesting, downright demonic. Some of these newer horror movies that get so deep into mutilation and torture and demonology and all that stuff. You got to really be careful about that kind of stuff. I've actually had cases where young people were addicted, demonically addicted almost, to video games and stuff. You got to watch what gets in your mind because that is the fertile ground there, you know, and that is your weakest point if you look at it that way. That is the weakest point they can get to you. That's why propaganda was so very prevalent in World War II. Hitler knew how to play a propaganda game. He knew how to play it well. And his men like Goebbels and all that, they knew it too. And it still goes on to this day. I'm not going to get into politics right now, but I'm just saying it's that suppleness is still there. They still playing the mind games with us. It's just Hollywood makes money off of it, you know.
Oh yeah, they hit every sense of the human aspect. You know, you got the music playing in the background
Yeah.
at certain times, and they got the mood
music,
lights going on, and
you got the music. You know, the music is so emotional in these movies. They bring up that emotion in you too. They knew it. That's the assault of the ears, not the eye. You know, they're going in through the ears too. You know. And listen, here's the interesting thing about some of these video games. While you're playing them, they're talking to you. So you're not only getting the visualization, you're getting the sound reference on this too, you know? So you're looking at almost a form of mind control.
yeah, you got to kind of wonder about the subliminal messages that are coming into you that you don't realize.
Exactly. Like that movie, that great movie, you know, They Live. You know, when he puts on the sunglasses and he sees what's really in the world, you know, obey, do this, do that. And it's all subliminal. It's all in his mind and he didn't know it. But that's the perfect way to do mind control. Don't let your subject know he's being mind controlled, you know? Don't do that because then they resist it, you know?
Yep.
I like the part of the where they live where he has to beat his buddy up and make him put the sunglasses on to finally get him to see it, you know. And that's another sense to like the body snatchers. Nobody would believe this guy, you know. And that's a bad situation to be in. What if you had? That's like that old TV series, The Invaders, which was a great. You might remember that back in the '60s. Great TV show. One of the very forerunners of science fiction in TV. And the poor guy was going around saying they've invaded, they're taking over the world, and nobody would
Twilight
believe
Zone.
it. Yeah. Nobody would believe the guy. You feel sorry for him, you know. He's running around trying to save us, and nobody will cooperate with it. Finally, he gets some people to believe it. I think it's a series, but it never ended really good. But he finally got a few people to believe him. And, you know, that kind of is what we're doing today in some aspects. The things that we talk about, the things that we say, and people don't believe us. You know, they don't say, I don't believe that stuff, you know, all that stuff. That's a conspiracy theory. They don't want to believe that, you know. But what if we're right and we're trying to tell them the right thing and they won't believe us, like the body snatchers? You know, you're going to wake up one day and it's too late. That's a bad situation to think about.
That's the thing, you know, when you experience stuff in the real world and you have that in your back of your head all the time, you know, nobody's going to believe me. They're going to think I'm crazy. You know, and just think of how many stories and things that have happened that we don't ever hear about because nobody wants to come out and face that criticism.
Well, that's the thing about it. You know, I said this the other night as paranormal investigators. And my job is not to convince you of anything. I can beat my head on the wall all I want trying to get you to believe something, you know, whether I know if it's true or not. But I'm saying that's not my job. You know, you're not going to believe one way or the other, even if I give you the actual evidence. You're going to have to come to that conclusion yourself, and you should. You shouldn't. You know, you shouldn't have to believe what I tell you or what I show you. You should come to that conclusion yourself.
Okay, I got to interrupt the broadcast. I want to say hello to Werewolf and the Cryptid Hunters out there. Tara, and let's see who else came in here alone.
Tom Springer.
Everybody, Cat. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate. Apologize for some of the technical difficulties. That's why you'll see me cutting every now and then and letting these two talk, because I'm trying to that aspect of it. So just bear with us. You guys go ahead and go with it, and I'll just keep on posting the comments in the back from the back room while I work on the technical problem.
Okay.
Okay. We had a service announcement there. I agree to America. It got pretty dark. I stopped watching it, and that was my favorite ghost show for you. Yeah, that's true, cryptid hunters. It gets too dark, and it kind of hurts your spirit. It kind of affects your soul. You better be careful when you run into something like that, because that's you. That's the signals going off. That something is not right. Something is not good for you, and it might not affect other people that way. But no, we're talking about you. If it's you, you pay attention to that. That's a smart idea because there's something trying to tell you something. And like I said before, the eyes, the ears, they're the windows to the soul, and they're to our intellect as well. There are so many things that can twist us and send us down in wrong avenues of life. We have to be very, very careful of what we let in to our life. You know, and I've often said this many times with the demonic. We unfortunately open doors to them, and doors can be movies, they can be books. Some of the worst books I've written, like the Book of Shadows and all these things, they can affect you spiritually. So you have to be very careful with these things. It's just like you don't eat certain foods because it may upset your stomach. Okay, there's certain things you don't want to eat that you know will not sit well on your stomach. Don't do that. We beat our heads against the wall for no reason sometimes, and if something is affecting you badly, you pay attention to it. Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
You know, the bad thing about all this is that Hollywood takes it to such an extreme.
Yeah.
And then when you're out here in the real world investigating, and then you run into people, and a lot of times they got a negative opinion of you just because of what they watch in the movies or see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, that's like the ghost hunters and stuff. Okay, I would say 90% of all this ghost hunting programs you see and all that are really fake because you got Hollywood involved in here. Okay, you got to realize that. That's what Hollywood. Just like everything you see on television is not real. Okay, I've been in a movie. I was actually in a movie. I had a part in a movie, a horror movie. It was called Carolina Grindhouse. If you ever want to watch it. I had a part in it, and it's interesting to see how a movie is made. So much of it, 99% of it, is not real. Okay, I hate to tell you that, but it's not. It's all made up stuff here. Okay, but they want to make it appear to be real. Of course, that's their goal. But you got to remember, it's not real. But when you get into the real stuff, that's the scary thing. When you get into the real actual thing of it, and it's not Hollywood. Um, but Hollywood's good at that. They can make you believe something's not, especially with all these CGI effects. They can, make Captain America throw his shield at you 500 miles an hour, or and stuff like that. A lot of people, and here's a funny thing. I talked to a karate instructor about this one time, Gerald, and he said that he has a problem with young people coming in wanting to learn karate because they think they can leap 15 foot up in the air. That's a karate movie for you, but that doesn't happen in real life. Okay, try it. You'll see what I'm talking about. You cannot jump 15 feet up in the air, okay, unless you got a trampoline, which is what they use in the movies, by the way. Trampoline. You don't see it, but it's there. Anyway, or they're hanging on wires, whatever the case may be. But people have a tendency to believe too much of what they see, and that's the dangerous part of it. As Edgar Allan Poe once said, "Believe nothing that you see and half of what you hear." How very true that is, because you can be flim-flammed very easily, especially with your eyes. Look at the magicians and illusionists. They can make the Eiffel Tower disappear or make the Statue of Liberty disappear. It doesn't really disappear, but they make it look that way. Uh, I used to love to watch David Copperfield. He was great at doing stuff like that. Anyway, that's how they made their living, appearing to make things look real that are not. It's kind of like, remember that thing you used to buy when you were a kid? It looked like a nail sticking in your finger. Remember that?
Right.
Oh, look, Mom, I stuck a nail. It looks real, but it's not.
Now anymore, bringing up what you believe in movies and stuff, I kind of start looking for the red pills in the movies these days and science fiction. What are they not telling us, or what's really happening? Whether it's med beds and the sci-fis and portals opening up, because you got to kind of believe that stuff is really there.
But unfortunately, they're doing that to a lot of the younger generation, Carol. It is mind manipulation, and that's going on in schools, and all that stuff that's going on now, especially with these drag queen shows and all that stuff. This is a subtle form of manipulation. But here's what I've got to say about manipulation. Whoever you are, when you start trying to manipulate somebody, that puts you in the bad guy category. I just do not believe in manipulation. It's not right. It's not honest. It's not forthright. It's not a good thing. Whoever's doing it, it's still wrong. Wrong is wrong. And mind manipulation, however you go about it, is not a good thing. Your intentions might be good, but I'm sorry, you're dead wrong on that.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Hollywood, you see that question there? There's a big reason why the CIA has offices in Hollywood. Oh yeah, definitely. They know the concept is a viable thing. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they got to control the narrative. They can't just let us go and have our own ideas and think of what we want on our own.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that's like unfortunately, when you do manipulate someone's mind, you're usually a corrupt individual. Okay. And when you manipulate, you're not manipulating in a good way. If there is such a good way, you're not manipulating in a good way. It's usually a bad way. That's the bad thing about it. I remember. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV series. I love the TV series Firefly. You remember that? That was a great TV series. And when they made the movie Serenity off of that, there's a very interesting concept in the very end of that movie. They find out that the Reavers, who are the bad guys, are actually made that way by a failed government experiment. An experiment that killed millions of people on this planet, wiped the planet out. Because the government went in and did something to their drinking water or something to try to change them and make them more docile and manipulate them the way they wanted them to be. And it went the other way. It turned them into these ravening, murderous animals. And they went out and here's the interesting thing. The captain, they tell him, we've got to let people know this happened. We've got to let people know that the government did this, and they said, why are you so big on that? Why you want to push it so far? I said, because sooner or later, they'll do it again. They'll try it again somewhere else, if we don't expose it, because that's the way they work. That's the way manipulation goes.
Yeah.
That history, guys, that you just there is Hitler added the supply during World War II and to keep the masses under control for the Third Reich. And then modern times now, you've got Nestle's, the candy company, into their bottled water. Nestle's Pure Pride is one of them that they put the lid in. You keep
and nice
and subdued.
You know, William, I talked to vets from the Vietnam War. They kept them in tiger cages, the POWs, and they treated them like animals. They would, they didn't even eat out of bowls with spoons. They would throw their food on the floor. They were animals, and they began. And this was a subtle form of mind, not so subtle, but is a form of manipulation, mind manipulation. They began to believe they were animals in that case because they couldn't stand up like a man anymore. They couldn't move around like a human being. They were treated like animals. They became animals to a certain extent. And that's the way these things work. That's the way Hitler wanted things to be. Mao Zedong wanted that. Communism and all that has killed over 259 million people since 1917. Think about that a minute. Stop and think about that a minute. 259 million people are not here because of communism. That's a bad thing. So how did they get there? How do they still control the masses? How do they still have control over these people? It starts here in the mind.
Yep. Yeah, you gotta, they break you down and get you to the lowest level of human, existence, and then once they can break you that way, then you start thinking and following it along in that line, and that's how they get you. They keep pounding on you till they get you down to that bare minimum of even being human anymore.
And guess what? That is the very way that the demonic works on people. They lower them below animals. That's their goal, to lower you below an animal, completely control you and shove you down and stomp you in the ground. That's just the way that works. That is what the end result and goal of complete control, even when you talk about demonic possession or even invasion of the mind by outside forces, whether they be demonic or human, whatever the case may be. That's what you're talking about. The ultimate goal is the absolute subjugation of that subject. I know I never was a preacher. I'm sorry, Lily. My grandmother told me many years ago I should have been a preacher, but I've gotten close to
I love that. I love that one.
Well, actually,
maybe
I am ordained. Actually, I am an ordained minister. Actually, I am. But I don't have a church and I don't preach. I'm sorry.
Well, believe it or not, my family has been in the church, our whole lives. We've all grown up in it. And my uncle was a Lutheran pastor, and my aunt ran a Pentecostal church. And then the church that I met my wife in, I ended up being in line to be like an assistant pastor. So I've been behind the pulpit a few times.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think that we get caught up many times on organized religion. And really organized religion is a man-made thing. We must understand that. It's trying to put God in their little box the way they want him to be. That's the way I look at it. Organized religion can be it's caused a lot of wars. It's killed a lot of people, maybe almost as much as communism had, unfortunately. To kill in the name of God is not a good idea because God usually doesn't want that. We need to check with God, see what he wants on that before we do anything in his name. But that's what organized religion, unfortunately, is really organized by what? Men, not God. God has no specific church that he backs up. I haven't heard about it yet. Yet I haven't heard it. I ain't got the news on it. But we got to remember, religion, organized religion, is man-made. Okay, that's the way that ball bounces.
Well, there's been a lot of atrocities happening in this world, and most of it is because when they come out and say "in the name of," and whatever it, whatever that is, and they try to get the people to fall in line and follow because they have this high in the name of, and you can substitute whatever you want in that place. And
it used to be once upon a time you could come in the name of the king, open the door in the name of the king. That's before we got independent, the Boston Tea Party was run on that thing. But you came in the name of something other than yourself that was supposed to give you authority. But the interesting thing about it, we've always said this in different wars, and oh, God's on our side. How do we know that? Did God actually tell us that? Did we actually check with him on that? Because he might not be,
I'm assuming both sides are saying that they had God on their side.
That's man's outlook on it, unfortunately. I think we, unfortunately, that's just like I said, I've said this before, it's kind of a joke, but, the insurance company, if a tree falls on your car, that's what? An act of God. Wait a minute. God had nothing to do with that. God doesn't go around dropping trees on your car. Okay? That's just not the way that works. But he gets blamed for a lot of stuff. Why are we doing that? I'll tell you what, there are signs, there are actual evidence perhaps that great storms are not, or sometimes can be demonically enacted. Did you know witchcraft, dark witchcraft can bring up certain windstorms and stuff? These are not acts of God, sometimes. I don't see God doing that, today God wakes up one morning. Today I think I'll wipe out St. Louis, with a tornado. No. I just don't see. I don't see that, But some people think it's that way.
I agree with Love Cat here on her comment. Religion actually separates us as a human race. Each denomination is just, one way to separate us. Yeah,
well, that's what's going on in
bring
the world
us together
today.
like it should,
That's what's going on in the world today, William. Too much division. You're this, you're that, you're this. They put you in these different things. There's no unity anymore. Once upon a time, when somebody said, "Where do you come from?" you said, "I'm an American." That was enough. That was America. Or I'm Irish. If you came from Ireland, or whatever the situation, but no more. You're categorized now. You're a Latin American, or you're whatever. That is dividing people. There's no unity to it. And unfortunately, some of our last great political leaders were very good at dividing us. And here's one thing we must remember: was said thousands of years ago is very true to this day. A house divided cannot stand. How very true that is. Jesus Christ said that 2,000 years ago. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And it won't. And unfortunately, we are victims of that today.
Yep.
Very true.
No, not yet, honey. Not yet.
Yeah, that's the problem these days, that you either have to be in one camp or the other. You can't just live your life and be happy with yourself. You have to either, if you don't follow me or agree with my stance, then you're my enemy. And that's just happening way too much these days.
Well, that's true, very true what Stephen says there. The military taught unity. You can't have a military without unity. You can't have a cohesive army or navy or whatever the force is without it acting as one. We have to act as one.
The brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that depends solely upon your leadership too, though, guys. You and anybody that's a veteran knows that you depend upon your leadership in the military to guide you and to look out for you and make the right decisions. If you've got the wrong people in those positions, your military is not going to be good for crap.
Exactly. And that's what's going on today with the military. Unfortunately, they're more concerned with the wokeism stuff going on. They're more concerned with us stuff instead of trying to have that unity that you need in a good army. You have an army, that's like Shakespeare said, we band of brothers. When you're, in the army, you're a band of brothers or sisters, as the case may be, if you're women. And they've lost that.
Yep.
And unfortunately, some of the communist countries have not. Yeah. They don't do that. They march as one out there on this parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be enough just to
you let it also
want to fight for your country,
Yeah. And take a look at it as like if you're going out into the woods to do a cryptid investigation or a ghost hunting investigation, you're only as good as the person that you put in charge of that group. Okay.
Yeah.
Go into,
how can you have
the
a team?
Right setup to
how can you have a team if everybody's doing their own different thing? How can you have a team,
Yeah, you definitely have to have a leader.
Yep,
exactly. You can't have somebody that's weak in charge.
That's right. Well, that's why the leadership is very important.
Well,
it all comes down to leadership,
Yep. With that being said, let's give some notes here, guys, to everybody out there, our family. Although, first off, I want to thank everybody for going out there and buying those Weirdo Warrior mugs. I've been posting pictures of everybody in the family that's bought them online. So if you got a Weirdo Warrior picture of it with you, and line, and post them line. In fact, I'm going to try to this also and see if I can post them, it out there too. But I think both styles good. I mean, but that being said, my final thoughts are question everything. You have to question everything, okay? Question everything. All right. Don't be afraid to let your weirdo. If you're into cryptids, if you're into paranormal investigations, UFOology, any demonology, family. So, and to stick together. Every channel is about as far as the paranormal goes. Just give it. I'll put on the screen, and also my email back here to put that up for let's see, where you at? Come on, computer. About as slow as me this morning. Okay. So there's that. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the chat, email in there. Dennis, why don't you start off and your new podcast coming up and all that, and then we'll go to Gerald. And Gerald, I want you to your group and what you do and that too. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I've got a podcast coming up tonight. It's going to be my first one in this series. It's going to be with a fella called Grizzly Chris. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. At 9 o'clock, it's called Demonology Today. And it's going to be strictly about demonology and demonological stuff. And that's going to start tonight. And it's going to be every Sunday night at 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, if you want to contact me or are interested in any of my books or whatever, you can certainly find me at my website, denniswcarroll.com, or you can email me at ghostwolfdc@gmail.com.
All right. Yeah, we have a YouTube channel, and it's Midwest Night Watchers. And we're right now we just have some videos of our backyard sky that we see some objects, and it could be shooting stars, it could be anything, just objects moving in the night sky. We don't really know what it is. And then we're gonna try to continue the series and maybe do some live streaming from the backyard so people can see it real time as we're talking about it. And then me and Chiro are gonna probably start doing some live streaming ourselves, just a show impromptu to start with, just to introduce ourselves. They'll be popping up here pretty soon probably, and then we'll go from there. And you can obviously get a hold of us at Midwest Night Watchers at Gmail if you have any questions or want to send us anything. And we have a Facebook page for the same name, Midwest Night Watchers, and we hope to see you guys get involved.
I want to chat. I want to thank Dennis and everybody, the way you came back and forth. I had a hard time actually keeping up with the chat, so that's how good it was. I appreciate everybody being here. The channel, if you can, you notice we're having some technical difficulties. But the technical difficulties, it is what it is, equipment. So that being said, I'm going to have to upgrade on some of the equipment here. But I want everybody support the channel, like, heart, and share. Subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Twitch. Truth Social is another one. I got on Truth Social. Okay. It's under William Nighthawk 333. And you can also Google Nighthawk High Strangeness on there too. So, but Truth Social is another one. We're on Rumble. Unfortunately, Rumble to connect to StreamYard. So, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do the podcast. I'm probably have to use my cell phone to record off of one and a camera for another. So, but that's all technical crap. So, but everybody, I want you to have a great Sunday. Have a good time. It's not cold. It went from 5 degrees to 30 degrees practically overnight here where we're at. So I won't be going outside today. But
Me either.
anyways, I want to thank everybody. You're all great, and everybody just have a great day. Okay. Sunday, I as a little twist to Dennis. Maybe Dennis, you could end this in like a prayer, please.
Okay, since our subject was a little dark, I'd like to say one of my favorite kind of prayers of safety, which is the St. Michael prayer, if we can. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us this day in battle against the snares and wickedness of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the divine power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits that wander throughout the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
Amen. Just want to say that I really enjoyed being here today, and everybody stay true to themselves and spread love and not hate. Love thy neighbor.
All right, everybody. Thank you for.
Well, William and Dennis, thank you for having me on the show. I can't wait to get back on sometime, and I guess we're supposed to end here pretty soon. So it was a pleasure being
All right,
here.
you take care of yourself, my friend.
I will. You too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.